Welcome to the comfy zone. Make yourself at home.
My dad always loved the Beatles. He knew all of their songs by heart, and I swear, at a moment's notice, he was ready to drop more information about the Beatles than you could find on their Wikipedia page. He even named me Jude, and some of my earliest memories are of him belting out "Hey Jude" to me. His collection of their whole discography on vinyl was his prized possession, the most prized of which was the White Album. He was practically an evangelist for that one. He always said that the White Album was the culmination of everything good about the Beatles, and it had something for everyone. I can remember all the times he would sit back, relax, and listen to the whole double album. By the time one of the final tracks on the album, Revolution 9, came on, he was practically entranced. He said the album really spoke to him. I mention all this because my dad passed about a month ago. We had a great relationship, so it really shook me up. Since then, I've been going through the record collection he left for me and started reminiscing over how much he loved the Beatles. One day last week when I was looking through them, I found the White Album. It had been years since I had listened to it, so I listened to it in his memory. The whole thing was great, but I've always had a weird feeling when I listened to Revolution 9. And I mean real weird. All the noise and the random talking just gives me the creeps. I usually skip that one, but felt like I owed it to his memory to listen from beginning to end. The thing is, though, that this time around, the feeling I got wasn't creeped out. It was almost a feeling like butterflies in my stomach. So I listened through to the end. That was when it happened. I don't know if anyone else has ever experienced this, but it was as if the music somehow took on a life of its own. I don't understand what happened or why it did, but that night, I fell asleep with the record playing softly in the background. When I woke up the next morning, I had this strange sense that I had done something wrong, like I had forgotten something important. That morning, I put the White Album on again while going through Dad's things. I knew all the songs from my childhood, but they were starting to grow on me personally, in a way they never did before. I could feel myself getting drawn into the music. I hadn't realized that I was dancing along with the music until I actually looked down and saw my feet moving without any help from me. There was a small part of me that wondered why I was doing this. I sat down to look through the liner notes of the album and came across a handwritten note. It didn't look like Dad's handwriting, so I was curious to find out why it was in the album sleeve. The note said, "You have to hear Revolution 9." I placed the note back into the sleeve, assuming it was a note from a previous owner before my dad. I continued going through my dad's things and listening to the album. Eventually I got to the end of Cry Baby Cry, and Revolution 9 began. For the first time listening to it, it sounded like nothing I had ever heard before. I mean that literally. I was hearing things I had never heard in the song before. It was almost as if I could feel the song moving around me. The song went on for a long time, and I didn't really pay attention to what was going on in the background. Then at one point I realized that the noise coming from the track was gone, and I realized that there was a voice coming from the other side of the record. I stopped the record and listened carefully. I couldn't believe my ears. The voice sounded like Dad's. He was saying something, but I couldn't make out what he was saying, so I moved the needle and played it again. This time, I made sure to listen closely. I still couldn't make out what he was saying, but I could tell that he was trying to talk to me. I started to get worried when I realized that I wasn't going to be able to understand him. I kept playing the song over and over again, waiting for him to say something more, but it was just the same thing over and over. I decided to keep going with the song. The longer I listened to it, the more I felt like I was losing control of my body. My head started to hurt, and I found myself struggling to breathe. I don't know how long I was like that, but eventually I fell asleep. When I woke up the next morning, I had the strangest feeling. It was as if I was back in the living room, where I had been dancing along with the music. I looked down at my feet and saw that they were moving again. I looked around the room and everything was the same. I couldn't believe what was happening. I started to panic. I thought I was going crazy. I called my sister Hannah and asked her if she had ever noticed anything weird about the album when Dad would put it on. She told me that she never noticed anything strange. She said that Dad liked to play it sometimes when we were kids, but that was all. I asked her if she remembered anything about how Dad would get listening to the White Album, and she told me that he used to get into this really deep trance when he listened to it. She said that he would sit there and stare at the record player for hours, like he was mesmerized by it. She seemed a little concerned why I would be asking about this, and I told her I was just reminiscing and had listened to the album the night before. We talked a few more minutes before I told her I needed to get back to sorting through Dad's things. I couldn't stop myself from going back to the album. I pulled the record out of the sleeve and set it on Dad's old record player. I decided this time I would go straight to Revolution 9. The butterflies feeling returned, and it felt like a cool breeze passed me. It nearly gave me goosebumps. I didn't know what to expect, but I wanted to see if the voice would speak to me again. The record spun, and I waited for the song to start. Once again, the song went on for a long time. As it neared the end, I realized that the noise from the track was gone, and then I heard the voice again. This time I could make out what he was saying. Listen to the song. Listen to the song. Listen to the song. I got up and walked around the room trying to find the source of the voice. I started to feel dizzy and confused. I sat down and tried to figure out what was happening. All I could do was stare at the spinning record and listen. The voice became clearer, but it didn't sound like Dad. If I hadn't been so entranced, I would have fallen out of my chair when I heard the voice say, "You must hear the song. You must hear the song. You must hear the song." There was nothing I could do but sit in the chair and stare at the spinning record. I felt chills run down my side, through my legs, and into my toes. I felt a grin growing on my face until my cheeks hurt. I couldn't help but laugh out loud. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Someone or something was speaking to me. The voice hadn't stopped talking to me until I realized that the album had almost come to an end. As the final track, Good Night, was ending, I continued staring at the spinning record. I felt like the record player was pulling me toward it. I knew in that moment that the voices on the record had changed. I heard the usual whispered, "Good night, everybody. Everybody. Everywhere." And time seemed to stop for me when it followed up with, "Good night, Jude." Adrenaline rushed through my body as I regained control over it and the record stopped spinning. I felt flushed, and cold sweat dripped down my forehead. My cheeks felt relief as I was able to finally release the grin that had grown on my face moments earlier. I placed the record carefully back into the sleeve and took greater care handling it than I ever had before. I knew Dad's record collection needed to be treasured. For the first time, I finally felt what Dad had told me all these years. This album really speaks to me.